Springfield's Talk 104.1 and a good Monday morning. How do you do? My name is Nick Reed, mostly sunny, a high of 66 for the day. President Biden making a surprise visit to Ukraine, though one can't help but wonder if he just got on the wrong flight. He was slated to go to Poland, and this is being described as a surprise visit over there where he may be more popular than he is in his own country, or reasons that most of us can understand. The latest on that surprise visit, there was an unfortunate story in the San Francisco Chronicle about a young Ukrainian refugee girl who desperately wants to get back to Ukraine because of how unsafe the public schools are in California, specifically in San Francisco. The total lack of any sort of control, kids cursing out teachers. She's horrified by this and wants to go back to her war-torn country where things are safer. Don Lemon taking a holiday. He will return on air depending on, quote, where his head is at. This after claiming that it is a fact, because you can Google it, that women are past their prime once they get into their 40s, talking about Nikki Haley. And I want to share also a piece regarding the IRS, rise of the tax machines. IRS algorithms are coming for you. And what this piece illuminates is something that I have been arguing for some time in terms of the outcome, and that is the fact that it is the non-wealthy that are most likely to get audited. And according to an investigation that was done, it is not only the non-wealthy, but the poor and blacks are audited at a higher rate compared to whites. And this, of course, is very fascinating because the Democrat Party is wanting to expand on the IRS. The Democrat Party passed all of this funding to expand the power of the IRS, and it's just a much different approach than defund the police, isn't it? When they're coming for your money, they have no trouble, evidently, with this massive government institution targeting, just use some of the terminology that get used when it comes to law enforcement. They have no issue at all with this massive institution targeting black people and targeting the poor. One of the reasons that it is so easy to target middle and lower income folks is because middle and lower income folks are much, much more likely to just whatever you say, okay, fine. Because they don't have the means to fight the IRS. The IRS is in one of those brilliant positions where they get to use your money to come after you. And because the lower income and middle income American, the IRS can come along and say you owe $10,000, but we'll settle. We'll allow you to settle because we're just so kind and caring for, let's say, $3,000. Having no choice, no recourse, no financial ability to protect oneself, it is that segment of the population that's most vulnerable. And this is whom is going to continue to be targeted despite what the left tells you. It is not about the rich. It is about you, unless you are the ultra-rich. But if you are middle and lower income, it is about targeting you. Jason Reimer with the latest news update. And the first alert forecast, mostly sunny today with a high of 66. Tonight, partly cloudy, 38. Sunny, 61 tomorrow. Wednesday, showers and storms. Windy with a high of 66. Sunny and windy on Thursday with a high of 55. Want to welcome, though they have been on air with us for about a week now, Greene County Garage Doors. As you know, and you may have heard some of my recorded announcements on this, that we just, over the years, given the disproportionately high number of homeowners and the mindset of the average KSGF listener investing in oneself and home, not paycheck to paycheck so much, but making those wise investments. And so we're always trying to find the different categories that we feel are most relatable to you in order to serve you in that capacity, and at the same time find businesses that are looking for people like you. And one of the areas we just did not have anyone were garage doors. Of course, we have garage flooring and storage with garage experts, but we didn't have garage doors. And that is everything from, we wanted to find somebody that, would do a great job, somebody that had the same work ethic and mindset that you all come to expect, but also have every sort of level of door, if you will, all the way up to the higher end for those who might have homes that accommodate that and that are looking to invest in that way. And so wanted to let you know that they are on board with us now, and they should be for the foreseeable future. So any garage door needs that you have, you no longer have to wonder to whom you contact. Greene County Garage Doors. You can go to their website, greencountygaragedoors.com, or, of course, like the other companies that we have found over the years and collected together, you can see those under Nick's endorsements at ksgf.com. President Biden arrived in Ukraine's capital city of Kiev early Monday morning in a surprise visit. He's gone already, they said. These things, I am curious. How many people actually know? How many people know that it's the president versus somebody important that's going to be making a visit? And then, of course, you have speculation, because clearly something like this, there is a great deal of secrecy that accompanies it for obvious reasons. And those are the sorts of things I'm always curious about behind the scenes. But nonetheless, he showed up, told them how awesome they are, and then he left. I'm still not convinced he didn't just get on the wrong flight. He was supposed to be going to Poland on the 1-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine, which, of course, sanctions was supposed to prevent from occurring. Remember that? Why don't we do sanctions now? And the White House's line was, well, if we use them up now, then what will we have to stop the invasion from occurring? That was week after week after week. What we were told, that was the tool. That was why it was that we would have this power over Putin to prevent him, because he would not want those sanctions put into place. And so that was going to be the preventive measure. When it didn't work, of course, it was then changed by the president to, we never said that about sanctions. We never claimed that sanctions would be a preventative measure. And this is one of those instances where collectively the world wondered if he was just straight up lying, or if he really did not remember that was the official policy position of the White House. Hey, who knows? Maybe the unpredictability factor actually helps us to some degree. It always keeps them on their toes. They can't predict what it is that the United States is going to do, because Joe Biden is Joe Biden. There's a San Francisco Chronicle story that centers around a Ukrainian refugee girl who settled in San Francisco with her mom, and how she has found that the public school system in San Francisco is so violent that she wants to go back to her war-torn country of Ukraine. The piece on Sunday in the San Francisco Chronicle notes that it didn't take Yana long to realize that real life in her 8th grade classes at Marina Middle School was nothing like the screen that played out on her television screen. Students interrupting classes, jumping on desks, cursing at teachers. At first, Yana wondered what was going on, but then nothing happened, she said. Students were not disciplined. They weren't prevented from repeat behavior. The San Francisco Chronicle reports Yana just wants to go back to her hometown in central Ukraine, back to the only school she knew before the war, even as her mom and aunt have started to research camps and other programs in San Francisco to occupy the summer months. Now, San Francisco is a school district that there was what appeared to be this brief flash of sanity when there was a recall of 3 left-wing school board members, but the left wing regained a majority in the last November election, so a setback for the people. And this isn't the sort of thing that's isolated to San Francisco. I mean, many of you may have recognized these things going on in area schools here. These stories have been relayed to me as well. It is shocking the way that students are able to talk to teachers nowadays. And on one hand, somebody my age almost hesitates to talk about it, because you realize you start to sound like that person that says, when I was a kid and in my day. But the way that some of these students are, and the way that the teachers allow it to occur. Now, that being said, I understand oftentimes teachers are put in between a rock and a hard place here. They have rules with which they have to abide, and I'm sure they're supposed to constantly try to de-escalate things, and that means sitting there and watching all the other students see this play out. The other students recognize that ultimately the authority lies in the hands of the worst students who want to act out. And when you look at what is playing out in our streets, and then you see what is happening in the classroom, it doesn't make one necessarily think that, well, maybe things will get better, because it just seems to get worse. Over the weekend in Austin, which is a defund the police city in Texas, a liberal haven in the middle of, in Texas, And there was an incident where there were a bunch of young people that just took over this major intersection, and they were having street races, shooting off fireworks, just total and complete lack of control. And it has been, politically speaking, the left that has created this culture and this atmosphere that if you are a person and you don't want to abide by the laws, abide by the rules, you essentially will be allowed to do just that. And it is becoming something that is prevalent everywhere, and it's sad. When you see an anecdotal story such as this, a young girl, of course, fleeing to America because of the horrific circumstances in her own country, but at the same time having these dreams of what America is like based off of whatever sort of television depictions she had seen, and the whole idea of the American dream and freedom and people of all races just living harmoniously with one another in some of these movies of days back and television shows, and then having this stark reality. I can only imagine at some point it must be this questioning of, is there anywhere on this planet? Because the United States of America still, particularly for young people, is seen as this incredible place. Now, I had, of course, the benefit of spending time with folks from Ukraine, and at the time, anyhow, everything they knew about America was from movies that were pirated, essentially. They didn't have a tremendous amount of movie theater experience, and the limitations were pretty extreme on what one could see on television there. So it was mostly pirated, illegally downloaded and pirated television shows, and so they had these preconceived notions based off of all movies. One of the questions that they asked was whether or not it was true that on college campuses all girls were pretty. Because that's how that's generally portrayed in films and television shows that they had seen. And so there were these cliches before, now mind you, again, limited in the access to what sort of television shows or movies, but this was also before things got really, really overtly anti-American. And so the Beverly Hills 90210 and the movies from the 80s and 90s, again, where America's awesome and have these idealistic images, which, of course, aren't wholly realistic, but you can imagine. It's just sad to think that once upon a time, we were the country that universally anyone who got here would see the coexisting, would see the love for America, and it has just devolved. It has turned into this place in certain pockets of the country, and the San Francisco school districts are one of them. And again, I mean, we're not immune from it in our school districts around here. Just the level of chaos that is fostered, and who, of course, loses out in a scenario like that? The very people that we're told we care so much about, and that's the young people, education. And they are ultimately the victims. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. We got ourselves a Heroes Breakfast Friday, correct?
That's right.
All right. So next week, we will be broadcasting live 3 of the days from our Great Escape trip with a number of you that will be going along with us. We will have guest hosts on Monday and Friday, but Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you will hear us doing the show from Mexico.
I'm so excited.
Yes, I, too, find myself excited. Yeah. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that so you aren't confused. You may be a little sad that you are not with us. Every year I talk with folks like, well, I was going to do it, I just didn't pull the trigger. And then every year there are people on the trip that are like, this is the first time we finally pulled the trigger and did it. And so, off to Mexico we will go, and that is the scheduling plan for next week. Just give you a heads up. Don Lemon taking a holiday. He will return on air depending on, quote, where his head is at, according to a CNN insider. This, because of the comments he made about Nikki Haley, which were all about one thing. It was off-the-cuff insult of Nikki Haley. Is what it's so much of this is juvenile, and it's missing the real issue here. And it is a total and complete lack of objectivity. And it is having people that are your lead people in a network that are so anti-Republican that they say things that oftentimes make no sense at all. The comment, of course, Nikki Haley, she was announcing her presidency and talking about how the country, the GOP, needs to new generation of leaders and stop going back to the ones that are beyond their prime. And Don Lemon's on there with a couple of gals, and he noted that she shouldn't be speaking about that because she clearly is past her prime, given that it is, in his words, a fact, because you can Google it, that a woman is in her prime in her 20s or 30s. And then he kind of nervously said, well, 40s. He's trying to gauge the age of the two women that are either side of him. And this, of course, the thing about it is most of the position of so many people at CNN was almost confusion. We don't even understand what his point was. Well, you probably don't, because his statement on that derived from the same place that the reporting of most of the people from CNN do, and that is Republicans are bad. Unless they're bashing other Republicans, then they have a brief moment of sanity, and Democrats are good. And so Don Lemon was, Nikki Haley didn't say anything that was overtly off the mark or offensive. There wasn't anything outrageous that she said. And so the one thing that he could think of was to claim she was past her prime. And of course, then he had to, back it up with some sort of evidence. So he claimed it's proven true. I'm just the messenger. It's a fact. You can Google it. So it was just he was trying to figure out a way to insult her, because that's the go-to for these people at CNN. Amidst the mounting furor and calls for his firing over his comments last week that were widely condemned as sexist, Lemon was removed from Monday's CNN This Morning on-air lineup Sunday. A CNN insider telling Fox News Digital that Lemon has no plans to return to air earlier than Tuesday, adding that he is taking the holiday Monday and that his return to the show depends on, quote, where his head is. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of people that have an idea where it is. His absence on Monday was first reported by the Daily Beast, which also reported that Lemon's future at the network is uncertain. A person familiar with the matter told the Daily Beast that there are ongoing conversations about Don's future, adding that he has become a constant distraction for the network. The on-air suspension comes after Lemon issued an apology to his colleagues on Friday for comments he made about women and aging, in which he knocked Haley, the 2024 Republican presidential candidate, for being past her prime. His boss, CNN CEO Chris Licht, scolded the host on Friday for the comment, calling it upsetting, unacceptable, and unfair, and a huge distraction. Because this, of course, is the thing that causes CNN to lose its credibility. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. The American Transmissions Talk at text line 447 KSGF. First alert forecast, mostly sunny day, a high of 66, 38 tonight. Sunny 61 tomorrow, showers and storms Wednesday with a high of 66. A common question is bouncing off the fact that Biden once again goes somewhere that his presence suggests he feels is very important, the issue. So he shows up in Ukraine because, right? But he won't go to our own border. He will not visit border facilities. He will not visit the disaster with the train derailment in Ohio. And it's somewhat rhetorical, I suppose. People say, well, why is it he can make it all the way over there to Ukraine, but he cannot visit here in the United States? And the answer is sometimes more simple than we think it may be, and that is, over there he's going to get, like, they want something from the United States. So over there, he doesn't have to worry about tough questions. He's just going to go over there and look really good. The pomp and circumstance, and he's thinking that this is here I am, and I'm popping up in a war-torn area, and the United States is the hero. The whole thing's quite disgusting. You think about it. The last time, I believe, if not one of the last times, that the man visited Ukraine, he shook them down and laughed at them as he told that story at the, I don't know what summit it was. And the then acting top law enforcement official of Ukraine was investigating the corruption at Burisma, where Hunter Biden had a seat. And Biden mocked them, laughed about the fact that he told him, you fire that investigator, otherwise I'm going to make sure you don't get that $1 billion in aid you have coming towards you. And then laughed about the fact that before his wheels were even up, the guy was fired. So you go from that, essentially shaking down a country to make sure it stays corrupt, threatening to withhold dollars, to now going over there and bragging about how much money you're going to give them, how much, if not direct funding, but weaponry to help them in their fight against Russia. What a just a surreal / corrupt situation. All that being said, though, he doesn't really have any accountability over there. He could just go there. He can stand with the foe. It makes him feel like a big guy. Look how big and important I am. He doesn't have to deal with pesky questions, that come from his failures at the border, or the failure in the government response to Chinese spy apparatus, or to a train derailment in which you have different versions as to whether it's safe or not. And this is a constant theme with this administration. You don't show up in any place that is going to highlight your failures, whether it is a failure of your policy or a failure to react. The border clearly was a policy situation. It was caused by the Biden administration. I mean, for Pete's sakes, he broadcast to the world, if I get elected, come back, we'll take you in. When you're talking about a train derailment, that may not be a direct result of any sort of policy, but it's the reaction to it that proves to once again be a tremendous obstacle with this administration. Whether it's Buttigieg not showing up at any transportation-related scenarios, Kamala, of course, the border being her thing, among others, that she doesn't show up for, Biden not showing up, or when he does, it's way late to the party. So yeah, go over to Ukraine. Nobody's bothering you with that stuff. Everybody just loves you because you got all the toys that they want. I want to share with you a piece coming up here. It's an op-ed in The Hill, titled "Rise of the Tax Machines, IRS Algorithms Are Coming for You." And I'll give you a bit of a hint here. Those who are targeted by the algorithms are the categories of people that the Democrats claim they care about the most, which usually means you're going to end up with a target on your back. Sarah Myers,
Thank
everyone.
you.
You're welcome.
Well, tax season is among us, and maybe you have been holding off to get some of those home repairs done. Right now is the perfect time to give my friends over at Beatles Property Maintenance a call. They can come out, take a look at what's going on, get you on the books, and get your house fixed up for springtime. Now, Beatles, they do a variety of home repairs and maintenance. They can help you out with some of those big name items. Maybe you need a vapor barrier or crawl space repairs. Maybe you've had some mold that you need to get treated. But they can also help you out with some of those smaller, more fun home repairs, if you will. Maybe you want to update all of your light fixtures within your home, or maybe you are wanting to get your deck prepared for that springtime. Either way, if you have a big repair job or a small one, Beatles Property Maintenance, they can help you out. Now, you can find all of the contact information for Bruce and the Beatles Property Maintenance team at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
There is a tax lawyer at Miller and Chevalier Chartered in Washington, D.C. by the name of Robert Kovacev. And he has a piece in the Hill, Rise of the Tax Machine, IRS Algorithms Are Coming For You. And he writes, new research has cast a harsh spotlight on digital discrimination stemming from the Internal Revenue Service's use of algorithms and artificial intelligence, a key factor in disproportionate auditing of poor families and taxpayers of color. Remember, this is the outfit that Democrats are expanding wildly. It's interesting what a different approach they are taking to the IRS that is shown to disproportionately negatively affect people of color versus their defund the police movement. Isn't that interesting? Earlier this week, the Senate questioned President Biden's nominee for IRS Commissioner, Danny Werfel, about how an IRS algorithm targeted black taxpayers for audit up to 4.7 times as often as other races. Amid controversy over billions of dollars in new IRS enforcement funding, Congress should recognize that letting computers decide whom to audit could destroy more lives than an army of newly hired IRS agents ever could. Black taxpayers are between 3 and 5 times more likely to be audited than taxpayers of other races, a disparity that is largely driven by an IRS algorithm, according to a study published last month by the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research. The study, based on an analysis of IRS data, highlights an important development the agency would like to keep hidden: its escalating use of computer algorithms and artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI, to drive its enforcement agenda without transparency or any meaningful human supervision. When confronted with this study at his confirmation hearing, Werfel committed to providing the Senate with a report on the offending algorithm within 60 days. But that cannot be the end of congressional oversight into the IRS AI program. To prevent discrimination, Congress should mandate that the IRS set up effective and transparent safeguards on its use of AI to prevent biased algorithms from disproportionately targeting certain taxpayers. Last year, the IRS received $45.6 billion in new enforcement funding on top of its annual budget. This has generated considerable uproar over how the agency will spend the windfall, most of which has focused on whether the IRS would use it to hire thousands of new revenue agents to harass individual taxpayers. That criticism misses the point. Like many businesses and governments, the IRS is more likely to spend its money on machine learning and data analytics than on thousands of human IRS agents. Artificial intelligence helped auditors analyze transactions and spot patterns that can indicate potential fraud, using technology to help maximize revenue. But the rise of AI-driven decision-making by the IRS creates far greater perils than staffing up with human capital. Algorithms are often black boxes, and the reasons for the decisions they make can be difficult or sometimes impossible to determine. What's more, the IRS shrouds its algorithms in the cloak of bureaucratic secrecy. Taxpayers may never know if their fates were determined by a computer with no human safeguards. A simple example illustrates the point. In 2012, the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, known as TIGTA, studied an IRS algorithm to determine whether taxpayers were entitled to relief for certain penalties. The report found that 89% of the time, a taxpayer should have had the penalties removed. The IRS algorithm got it wrong and kept the penalties in place instead. This meant taxpayers were assessed severe penalties that the IRS should never have pursued. Even more disturbing, not a single one of those incorrect determinations was corrected by a human IRS employee, a 100% failure rate for human supervision of the algorithm's decisions. But for the investigation, nobody, least of all the affected taxpayers, would ever have even known about the damage caused by the rogue IRS algorithm. President Biden and other officials have promised that the extra IRS funding will not be used to audit taxpayers making under $400,000 a year. But what if an IRS algorithm decides that poorer taxpayers are a better target? For example, an algorithm reviewing IRS collection data may determine that low-income taxpayers are less likely to fight and more likely to pay tax assessments than wealthy taxpayers. It may then conclude that the IRS should audit more low-income taxpayers and fewer wealthy ones to maximize the success rate. The perverse results will be increased IRS audits of poor American families, which are already under the Biden administration at 5 times the rate of all other taxpayers, according to an analysis of 2021 internal IRS reports. But because the algorithm is a, quote, black box, nobody, perhaps not even the IRS itself, would ever know that low-income families were being targeted regardless of the $400,000 limitation until it is too late. It is not enough to rely on assurances that the IRS is monitoring its AI program. Congress must exercise its oversight to ensure that the IRS does not rely on biased algorithms in deciding which taxpayers to target. Further, Congress must force the IRS to be transparent about how it uses AI in making enforcement decisions so that taxpayers can defend themselves from being harmed by a rogue IRS algorithm. Otherwise, thousands of new human IRS agents may turn out to be the least of our worries. This is very Kafkaesque in nature. And it, quite frankly, is the sort of free pass that the government would love to target untold numbers of Americans who have no means to defend themselves. And when it comes to the IRS, it's not a department store credit card bill that if you just ignore it for long enough, it'll eventually be written off, and then it will, in a number of years, get off your credit report. They can take money out of your bank account. They can just clean it out if they want. And when you have an algorithm that does it, what are they to do? Other than to tell you these aren't decisions that are made by a human being, so there is no human being with which one can speak to try and figure out what's going on or why the individual is targeted. It allows them to wash their hands of it and say, sorry, that's just how it works. And it will go after the middle-income American. It will continue to go after lower-income Americans because those are the people that don't have the resources to protect themselves. Those are the individuals that don't, if they don't have thousands of dollars to pay some sort of attorney to defend themselves against the IRS, they certainly aren't going to be able to put up a fight, and so they just will buckle under and settle for whatever amount the IRS wants. This is all about getting money. And let's not forget, it was at a stop a couple of weeks ago that President Biden was talking about those extreme Republicans They want to fix these issues at the IRS, or God forbid, get rid of the agency altogether. And a crowd of Democrats booed an organization that is known to disproportionately go after and punish lower-income people and black people. And the idea of doing anything about that, the idea of eliminating this institution, is so appalling that the President of the United States uses it to illustrate how horribly radical the Republican Party is. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, not just your realtor, a totally awesome one at that, owner and broker of House Theory Realty. You can get all of her contact information under Nick's endorsements, whether you're looking to buy or sell. And if you have not given a review of your experience with Emily Johnson, I ask that you do so as a community service to people in the area who may not know. Maybe they don't necessarily listen to this show, so they don't know all the benefits of using Emily Johnson, but they'll just sort of randomly search, and it's very helpful when a person comes across reviews that are specific in nature. And so that's something that you can do to help out the community if you have used her services. And if not, what reviews are there you can definitely benefit from. And of course, like I said, I can't recommend her highly enough. That is Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. The American Transmissions talk and text line. This is Ray from Aurora. Former Vice President Biden's trip to Ukraine is stupid. That is a war zone. If he gets shot down or even shot at or claims to have been targeted, then we're in World War III also. We know the DNC would love to have the creepster out of the way, and they would love to have him as a dead patriotic hero instead of a soon-to-be impeached traitorous felon. I like how Ray here refers to him as former Vice President Biden as opposed to President Biden. Subtle, but I like it. There is, I don't know if you've seen this. I'll play the audio later. I don't know why this struck me as weird. Evidently over the weekend, Saturday I believe it was, Biden and Jill are having dinner at a restaurant, I guess just somewhere in D.C. And some Code Pink protester shows up and starts doing what it is that Democrats have been encouraging these left-wingers to do against Republicans for several years now and make them, quote, uncomfortable. And so this code pink gal is hollering at him about we need to get out of Ukraine and stop the embargo on Cuba and these sorts of things. But what's just I don't know why this struck me as odd. The Bidens are just sitting at a table as it's the okay. So the restaurant doesn't seem as if there's an event going on. It's just a normal restaurant. They're in a restaurant. It's not some event where there's a speaker and a banquet and a fundraiser. It's just any given restaurant. And if you watched the video and you had no idea what was going on, you would not even know that the president of the United States was there. It's just like sitting at this table with Joe Biden eating, and everybody's just sort of eating around, separate from them. They look like this. I don't want to say normal couple, but it certainly does not look like one would think the president of the United States. Like how it just seemed really, really unsecure that you could have any random protester walk in off the street and start filming herself yelling at the president, and there's no Secret Service that comes around or anything. It's a waitress. By the way, they're wearing masks, of course, because it's Washington, D.C. But a waitress deals with this person. There's no Secret Service to be seen that I could say, and you don't see the individual, how she ends up leaving the facility, but it's the servers in the restaurant that apparently are trying to do it. It's just the oddest thing. We'll get it up for you so you can see it on social media. News in 60 seconds. Guess Shamrock Shake's back today.
Woo! It's a good Monday.
I didn't know how you felt about
I
Shamrock Shake.
love me some Shamrock Shakes.
Well, and I guess there's also an Oreo cookie McFlurry version of a Shamrock Shake.
That also sounds good.
So anyway, those of you who are in that world of lovers of Shamrock Shakes, which clearly you are.
I am.
I like them.
I wonder how early you can get one of those. Because, for us, breakfast time is 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And lunch, we're 10 a.m.
Yeah,
so
9 to 10.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard for us to wait, like normal breakfast time. Or
Can you get
lunch.
milkshake? I would think the milkshake machines are always running.
I don't know.
I don't know why. That's a good question. Can you get ice cream? I mean, they don't really. Maybe they do shut those machines down.
I don't know.
I know
Questions.
they're notorious for being out of service, but yeah. Perhaps someone out there will know.
Maybe you can check on one of your 23 apps and see.
Oh, actually, you know what? I could check. I do have the McDonald's app on my phone. I don't know why I didn't just check that.
Yeah.
Surprised I didn't get an alert.
I'm surprised you didn't either.
So I'm going to play this audio. Now, the video, though, to me is, I don't know, perhaps more interesting than the audio. And I was talking about this for the top of the hour. There was a left-wing activist from Code Pink that began, so the Bidens are in a restaurant. And they're eating in this restaurant just as if they were some normal couple. And a Code Pink person makes their way. She doesn't get all the way up to the table. She's just like a table away. I suspect she's far enough away that she can get a good shot in her camera of him. And I don't even know that he even knew what was going on. The restaurant was loud anyhow, which you'll hear in the audio here, but then starts yelling at him about Cuba and Ukraine and so forth. But there were a couple of things that struck me about it. We'll get the video up so you can see it if you are interested in seeing it. One, just how normal the setting seemed. In other words, in my mind, you would not just walk into any restaurant on a given day, just waltz in and see the president of the United States sitting there and eating. There would be some sort of, you would, again, maybe I'm naive, but I would think that if you were to walk into a restaurant that was relatively small in nature, and the president was in there eating dinner, I would think you would be like, oh, there's something going on here. Yeah, clearly, what's all this security? What's the security here? If there was any security, this Code Pink individual was able to go in and start heckling the president of the United States. But furthermore, there was no Secret Service that seemed to try and stop this from occurring. And in fact, you will hear in the audio at least one person attempting to stop this from occurring, but it was a server at the restaurant. It's just so odd that I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but the whole thing seemed very strange to me. And I'm not suggesting anything like, oh, this was a setup or a plan. And I don't know I don't frankly know if it's worth thinking about too awful much, but it just seems so surreal. So here is the audio of that Code Pink person filming the president as she's yelling at him inside this restaurant.
President Biden, I hate to bother you. We need to end this war in Ukraine. We need to push for negotiation. I hate to bother you, but people are dying. And we need to end and lift the blockade in Cuba. Please take Cuba off the state side from here. Please. He's just trying to have a dinner. I hate to bother you. I'll happily leave, but I hope that we push for peace talks and negotiations and take Cuba off the state-sanctioned terrorist list.
Yeah, you can hear the people in there. Just like I said, we'll get the video up so you can watch it, and they're mostly just annoyed. They're like, "Oh, just get out of here, let us eat." And you can hear the server. She's like, "Just leave him alone. He's trying to eat. Get out of here." And she's trying as best as she can to get this Code Pink gal out of there without turning into some sort of physical altercation. But like I said, the two things that just struck me as one, they're just sitting there in a restaurant eating at a table by themselves. The president and his wife, they're up against a wall. They're in one of those walls, which frankly didn't even seem like a very good table. It looked like the sort of table that, I don't know, some people might not want, but what do I know? And then there's a big picture above them and so forth. But then the fact that you don't have Secret Service coming in, some sort of security swarming in, while what if this individual had wanted to kill the president? Now, there's some on this. Red State has a piece, and their take is more, well, will the media treat this the same way as they treat stories of Republicans getting heckled? You may remember there was a period of time in particular where you had a number of elected Democrats that were encouraging this, Maxine Waters being one of them, saying, get in their face, make them uncomfortable, let's, basically yell them out of restaurants, and that was seen as perfectly acceptable. Now, if this was some pro-life individual, some MAGA hat-wearing individual, it would be much different, but it's a Code Pink person. They are left-wing, and what I suspect is that it's going to largely be ignored. But to me, what should be talked about here is what appears to be the total lack of any sort of security whatsoever. It's just such an odd thing to me. Jason Rima with the latest news update. First alert forecast sponsored by Navant. Employee benefits that work. Mostly sunny, 66 for a high today. 38 tonight. Sunny, 61 tomorrow. And Wednesday, showers and storms. Windy and a high of 66. This weekend we head out, preparing for the Great Escape. We actually fly out Sunday, but most of us are going to head to St. Louis to stay the night. And I remember there was it was an honor flight of the Ozarks where somebody missed it because they got a flat tire. Now, you're not always going to be able to prevent flat tires. You're not always going to be able to prevent having some sort of mechanical issues, but you can oftentimes prevent those things from happening by catching them ahead of time. If you're going to do some sort of drive away, whether it's a staycation or you're going to be driving to the airport, that's the worst time you could possibly have some sort of vehicle issue. So I always recommend that you have it in beforehand, maybe a week or two, and just have them do the once over and make sure that it's road ready. It's A1 Custom Car Care for all of your car care needs. Big or small, you can find their locations for A1 Custom Car Care under Nick's endorsements, ksgf.com. Did you see that video of that protester, the Biden in the restaurant?
No, I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, and then let me know where you post it. I'm surprised it's not getting more attention because of the security angle. You know, somebody made a reference to January 6th, particularly the way that the Democrats portray this country when it comes to right-wingers and white supremacists and Trump supporters. We're just in this really, really dangerous time, and January 6th, of course, was worse than the Civil War and Pearl Harbor and 9/11 combined, squared, and that you would just have a situation like this play out. To me, it almost begs for people to suspect that it was some sort of setup for some reason. Now, I don't know what the purpose of the setup would be. I just can't figure any reason why the whole thing would be faked. If you were going to fake something like this, I would think the protester would be some right-wing individual, not somebody who's a code pink leftist. So I suspect it's genuine. It's just remarkable to me that this person can get that close to the president of the United States, and he's totally without any sort of security other than a server. A server steps in, and this person wasn't lunging at the president, just yelling at him and filming herself yelling at him. But if she could have gotten in the restaurant that close to the president, while his back is to her, by the way, his back is facing what would be the entrance, or his side is, it's just, I don't know. It just seems absolutely crazy to me. Where do we get it? We got it posted somewhere?
I'm downloading it right now.
Okay. All right. Bernie Sanders was on CBS. Now, Bernie Sanders, he's a poser. He is similar to just about every other socialist out there. They want to reap the benefits of financial gains, but it's unfair for other people to do so. The system is broken, but they certainly want to capitalize off of it. Hugo Chavez, Fidel Castro, I mean, there are examples all over the place, generation after generation after generation, where the individuals who preach the most about economic equality somehow live better lives than everyone else. It's just remarkable. And we had talked a couple of weeks ago that Bernie Sanders, who he has a book out that is anti-capitalist. It's titled "It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism." And he is doing a March 1st event in Washington, D.C., I guess about the book. And the tickets are for the front row $95. And there are other seats that aren't as good that other people have to. It just screams capitalism. So if you want a seat to come see Bernie Sanders, an elected official, you have to pay a certain amount. If you want better seats, you have to pay more. And so this, of course, screams poser. It screams hypocrisy. And he was asked about this on CBS yesterday morning.
This book, It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. And you're here talking about it. I understand we're not the bad guys you're describing in the book when it comes to media, but tickets for your tour apparently are selling for $95 on Ticketmaster, which is accused of anti-competitive behavior. You know that. Some of your Democrats are criticizing them. Aren't you benefiting yourself
I'm not.
from this system
First
that you're
of
trying
all-
to dismantle?
First of all, those decisions are made totally by the publisher and the bookseller. I think there's one case where in one place here in Washington, Politics and Prose, an independent bookstore, charging some tickets. Most of them, I think, are $40, $50, and you get a book as well. So if you want to come, you're going to have to pay $40. I'll throw in the book for free. And we're doing a number of free events, but I don't make a nickel out of these things at all.
But you're okay doing business with Ticketmaster?
No, not particularly, but that's, again, I have nothing to do with that. That is, if you wrote a book, it'd probably be the same process.
Mm-hmm. So you have to operate within the system.
I do.
Is
That's
what
right.
you're...
Write a book, a major publisher, et cetera, et cetera.
This guy's so full of crap. So full of crap. All of you folks who... this is one of the personality traits that Bernie Sanders is able to oftentimes get away with, and that is, but, you know, he really believes in what he preaches. No, he doesn't. He may believe in it for other people, but he doesn't believe it for himself. This is a guy who goes around the country talking about how we need to change things, how we can't be apathetic. We've got to get out there and really fight the fight. And when he's asked about his own relationship with the publisher, with Ticketmaster, he's like, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Gosh, it's no big deal. No, nothing to see here. Nothing I can do about it. All of a sudden, the great warrior wanting to take the fight against the evil capitalist. This great warrior for the common man, when he's benefiting from it, nothing I can do. Nope. Just the same as anybody else. Nothing else that I could possibly do about it. No big deal. Let's talk about something else now. What's even more fitting to demonstrate the poser status of Bernie Sanders, his excuse is that he's not making the money. The massive corporation of Ticketmaster and the massive corporation of his publisher, they're the ones making the money. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's kind of worse, isn't it? At least if it were Bernie Sanders, he was making the money, he could be like, hey, I put a little work into it. I'm just a guy. I'm not a massive corporation. I'm not somebody refusing to pay my fair share, but his excuse is, well, I'm not getting the money. It's this mega corporation that's getting it. So, I don't know when some of these folks, and it's always, I do know why. It's young people that tend to like Bernie Sanders, because young people, I've been one. Many of you have as well. Many of you still are. Somebody like Bernie Sanders comes along and makes these claims, pretending as if these certain things are realistic and can be done. And if you've never heard it before, you think, well, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Oh, yeah, just really stick it to those corporations. And, oh, yeah, we can tax people, and then that'll somehow make everything equal. We can just do all of these magical things. Government can run medicine, government can run corporations, government can run the economy, and it will make everything wonderful. But what occurs over time, as people tend to get older, they realize other people have sold this crap before as well. These fun little experiments that people like Bernie Sanders like to get into power and put in place only benefit the individual and his or her crony friends in the business world. Or they start paying attention and they realize, this is a guy who seems to benefit quite a bit off capitalism himself. And then when he's asked about it, he all of a sudden, this warrior for the middleman, a warrior for socialism, is like, oh, nothing I can do. I don't really know. Bernie Sanders is not authentic. Bernie Sanders is not genuine. He's full of crap. And if ever there was such a demonstration of it, that interview on CBS and his dismissive attitude, like, well, let's just move on. It's no big deal. It's nothing to see here. I'm only helping these massive corporations take people's money, that's all. He's a tool. You think about his position in this. Well, it's the publisher that sets it up. You wrote the book. So Bernie Sanders' position here is, hey, I'm not making anything off of it. I'm just working in tandem with a publishing company and then in tandem with Ticketmaster for this event. They're the ones, these big corporations, that are getting all the money, so nothing to see here. Is that not exactly what it is Bernie Sanders claims he's against? He's full of crap. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Now, speaking of Bernie Sanders and how full of crap he is, there's a new poll. U.S. voters strongly prefer capitalism to socialism. Only 17%, this is a Rasmussen report, only 17% of 900 likely U.S. voters polled between February 5th through the 7th prefer socialism to capitalism. 67% prefer capitalism, up from 65% in 2021. Well, that would make sense. That's just a slight bump, but I do believe that there has been some recognition from some Americans about the impact the government has on the economy, and we have seen it to a stark degree during COVID, where the government comes in and begins telling businesses how it is that they have to run themselves. Well, you have to be this far apart, and you can have tables together, but they have to be this far apart. Oh, there was the story the news leader did on Just for Him, and the nightmare scenario in which they couldn't get a straight answer on what they had to do to comply. To have one person from the city saying this, then you'd have somebody else saying that, and here they were trying to comply and could not get a straight answer. When you see in such a quick fashion government getting more involved in the day-to-day operations of a business, people begin to see what happens. They see the results. What COVID did is it turned the water up real fast on the frog. We already have a tremendous problem with government interference in the private sector, but COVID amped it up very quickly, and we saw the results of it. We saw how many people lost their jobs, how many people lost their livelihoods. And, of course, the government's position is, Well, but that was different. There was, a unique set of circumstances. Well, government always has a reason. Every intervention they develop, every instruction or regulation they put into place is because of a unique circumstance that they have to fix. And they know better than the business owner, and they have to, of course, protect the consumer. So they're going to come in and start telling you, here's how it is you're going to operate. And when you do that, it is bad for the business, it is bad for the employees, and it is bad for the consumer. And while that's not in any way, shape, or form a meaningful bump, I can't help but believe that capitalism probably got a little more favorable view over the last couple of years when people did an honest evaluation of what happens in an economy when government decides to step in and start calling the shots. Mostly sunny today with a high of 66, 38 tonight, sunny 61 tomorrow, showers and storms on Wednesday with a high of 66. Aller Building Company, brand new showroom floor. And I recommend that if you are the sort of person who is needing to get into a new home, whatever the reason, maybe you just want to get out of the city or into the city, or you're upsizing, downsizing, but you don't like the remodeling stuff, you want it the way that you want it from day one. Day one, you walk in that door, you turn that key, it is exactly the way you want it, then I recommend Aller Building Company. You go to their showroom floor, and in 2 hours' time, you can have your entire home designed in terms of the personality traits, if you will, of the home, the color schemes, the countertops, the roofing, whatever it is that comes with that brand new development. Aller Building Company, OLLER. There was a Rasmussen report poll done. 17% of 900 likely U.S. voters polled between February 5 and 7 prefer socialism to capitalism. 67% prefer capitalism, which is up from 65% in 2021, according to the survey. The results come after the House of Representatives passed a Republican-led resolution condemning the horrors of socialism, Cuban-American Representative Maria Elvira Salazar introduced the anti-socialism resolution, a symbolic move that declared the country, quote, founded on the belief in the sanctity of the individual, to which the collectivist system of socialism in all of its forms is fundamentally and necessarily opposed. The text of the resolution notes that, quote, many of the greatest crimes in history were committed by socialist ideologues such as Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, and Hugo Chavez. Quote, whereas socialist ideology necessitates a concentration of power that has time and time again collapsed into communist regimes, totalitarian rule, and brutal dictatorship. Now, who could vote against that? Well, 86 Democrats, evidently. The resolution ultimately passed in a bipartisan fashion, with 328 voting in favor, 86 voting against. House Republicans unanimously supported the bill, along with 126 House Democrats, while 86% evidently thought, well, what about all the good things Stalin did? The poll further found, back to the poll, 53% of voters would not vote for a candidate who supports socialism. 28% of poll respondents said that they would vote for a candidate who supports socialism. 19% are unsure. Broken down by political affiliation, Republicans are more likely to support capitalism and oppose socialism, as I'm sure one can imagine. 81% of Republicans believe capitalism is a better system than socialism, a view shared by 58% of Democrats and 62% of voters not affiliated with either major party. More than a quarter of Democrats like socialism better, compared to only 11% of Republicans and 15% of unaffiliated voters. You know, I was just having a conversation on Friday. It was in a video podcast. And the issue of capitalism came up. And I've never felt it was fitting to put capitalism in the same, I suppose, category, if you will, with socialism and communism for comparison and contrasting purposes. Like this, for example. Well, do you prefer capitalism or do you prefer socialism or do you prefer, those questions? Because to me, well, this is just the truth. Whether it's Marxism or socialism, communism, fascism, those are all these developed structures of government that were developed by somebody who thinks, hey, here's how to make a perfect society. And, of course, over time, you have different promoters and supporters and a little tweaking here and a little tweaking there. It's a framework. People in charge should force people to do this, and this will be the wonderful outcome. The goal is always some wonderful utopia in which the masses of people can be controlled, and everyone will blissfully be happy with what it is that the people in charge have determined. Capitalism isn't something that is planned, though within a free country you can have rules and regulations, but it is the undeniable natural evolution of people who are free. The other forms, if you want to call it government, Marxism, socialism, require an implementation. All right, here is a thing we are going to put in place, whereas capitalism just naturally occurs. And the reason that it naturally occurs is because you go back, it is simply, on a very basic level, you got two guys in a village, and one of the guys wants something that guy has, and then that guy's like, well, I want that you have, and I'll trade you for it. And it could be labor. I need a new roof on my house. That's something you know how to do. I know how to make butter. And so I will trade you 8 pounds of butter in exchange for you putting a new roof on my house. And of course, over time, what occurs is, all right, well, I need a new roof. You need butter, but you also need the supplies. And so over here has the supplies, but he doesn't want butter. What he wants is somebody to plant flowers. Well, I know somebody that does that. So, okay, I'll get butter for that person. They do the flowers for you. And it all becomes very complicated. So you then come up with a universal form of currency. That way you don't have to do something for this guy over here to do something for that guy over there, so you can get this so that you can then in turn do that. You just determine a value of that currency, and it makes it much easier. Now, this is not a philosophical idea. It's just human nature. It's natural. It just occurs because it is undeniable that as a living human being, at some point, somebody is going to have either something, whether it is a talent, whether it is a service or a good, that you would like to have. And that individual is going to want something in value in exchange for it, most likely. Of course, they could just give it to you, depending on the circumstances. But generally speaking, I'm going to give you something in exchange for something that I want. You don't have to plan. It is unavoidable. If you were to start a brand new planet of people and drop them off as toddlers and just sit back and allow them to grow, capitalism would occur because of the natural interaction people have with one another. Of course, what we see is capitalism today. You've got crony capitalism, and then you've got Wall Street. You have all these structures within that natural state of existing with one another, and oftentimes those things can be burdensome, and those things can also create an unlevel playing field. But generally speaking, who is it that's setting up those rules? It's government. So any time the question is asked, do you prefer capitalism? Do you prefer socialism? Those are, to me, you're talking about two totally separate things. One is, do you prefer a planned life? Do you prefer a planned society? Do you prefer that some individuals, whether it's because they used force or they were born into it, getting to make decisions that will be a one-size-fits-all for everybody? Or do you prefer, as an individual, autonomous human being, to be able to make decisions for yourself? That's the comparison. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. First thing you need to do before you go check out a home, maybe it's an open house, and you're like, well, we're not going to buy it. We've just always been curious what it looks like in there. Just anyhow, there's so many reasons to start at iwantagreathomeloan.com, and don't think if you go through your traditional means because you've been told, oh, don't worry, yeah, you'll be approved for that. That's not always the case. And there are instances, and I know that the Carrickers have dealt with this. There are people have come to them saying, well, I was told I was approved, but I wasn't really technically approved. And then, I made an offer on a house. I went back, and then they saw this issue over here or that issue there and said they couldn't fulfill their word on that loan. And fortunately, iwantagreathomeloan.com and the Carrickers over there are able to take care of those folks. But just start there. Start there. iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. Here. So there is a California Democrat by the name of Representative Judy Chu. And she has handed out congressional awards to at least 10 individuals who belong to alleged Chinese Communist Party intelligent fronts group, according to a Daily Caller News Foundation investigation. Over the last decade, Chu has awarded certificates of congressional recognition to at least 10 individuals for a variety of reasons, including launching a nonprofit, according to multiple sources. However, at the time the awards were given, the recipients also belonged to a handful of organizations that had been identified by experts of China and U.S. government agencies as front groups serving a Chinese government intelligence service. Furthermore, many of the certificate recipients have at one point or another financially contributed to Chu's political campaign, according to financial records. Of course, Chu did not respond to multiple requests for comments. 7 of the 10 individuals in question have belonged to either the Chinese Overseas Exchange Association or the organization with which it merged in 2019, the China Overseas Friendship Association, according to the Daily Caller News Foundation. Multiple experts telling the organization that both COEA and COFA serve the United Front Work Department, which is a Chinese government agency tasked, quote, with extending the CCP's influence, that would be the Communist Chinese Party's influence, and control over non-party organizations both domestically and abroad to advance the Communist Chinese policy objectives. This according to multiple reports from the U.S.-China Economic Security and Review Commission. Ina Mitchell, co-author of The Mosaic Effect, How the Chinese Communist Party Started a War in America's Backyard, said, quote, yes, COEA and COFA are front groups for UFWD. I so often reflect back to post 9/11, 2001, and these public conversations that we constantly had about how we were at war, we just didn't know it. This was one of the reasons Homeland Security was developed. One, for coordination purposes, because this intelligence group over here didn't know what this intelligence group over here knew. And so it was, at the time, evaluated as these blind spots. And if only there had been the ability to share information, then 9/11 could have been prevented. But I disagree with that. It is too comfortable to pretend as if these situations are not real dangers, because when you have a real danger on your hand, you have to do something very uncomfortable. I find it very unlikely, unfortunately, if prior to 9/11 we knew what was going to take place, that we would have turned to the war on terror. Now, we would not have allowed it to occur had all of the different departments known about it, and maybe we would have, because there were absolute clear warning signs, but nobody wanted to be accused of being discriminatory, being racist, and so a lot of these oddball behaviors, like learning how to take off a plane but not having any interest in knowing how to land it, was just dismissed as, oh, so he's a weirdo. But we told ourselves that instead of living in denial and exhibiting poor judgment. It was just a lack of information. And so there was a 9/11 report, and we had this national mantra of never again, and making sure that we were ahead of the curve and that we were not at war with someone without knowing it. Well, here we are, and China is at war with us. It is maddening when it is so apparent in front of our faces that it is occurring, and we're pretending as if it's not. Fentanyl across the border. This is the communist Chinese sending all the ingredients to the drug cartels that then put them together and flood our country with them. That is a deliberate act by the Communist Chinese Party. The tens or hundreds of millions of dollars that are given to these universities in the form of grants, many of which have research facilities on them. And of course, these Biden learning centers at the same time, and Biden receiving hand over fist dollars for the institutions that he's affiliated with. At least during the Trump years, Trump kicked up the investigations because he recognized, he knew what was going on. And it's one of the reasons that he directed the Department of Justice to start focusing on these efforts by the Communist Chinese to have a foothold on our universities or in our universities because of dollar amounts. Of course, the Biden administration, they get in there and they reverse that because it might create discrimination. I mean, we are so plainly under attack in a slow motion format here. Hollywood, utilizing the LeBron James of the world as propaganda mouthpieces for the Communist Chinese. Spy balloons that are just allowed to float overhead. And here you have, well, let's not forget Swalwell, whose bed was infiltrated by a Chinese spy, or Dianne Feinstein recently announcing and then forgetting she announced she wasn't going to run for re-election for a decade. A personal assistant, a communist Chinese spy. And here you have this congresswoman that left and right handing out these award certificates of congressional recognition to these individuals that are tied to the Communist Party and who are part of the organization whose effort it is to infiltrate other countries. I frankly, other than just rolling tanks across the border, don't know what else the Communist Chinese can do to let us know that they are slowly but surely at war with us while we just seemingly are pre-9/11. And once again, because dealing with that reality is a hard thing to do. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. there are a number of memes that are circulating as expected regarding Biden and this continued focus elsewhere compared to domestic issues that we're having here. Senator Rand Paul had a photo. I think it was the mayor of East Palestine or the governor of the state of Ohio wearing a Zelensky mask, saying it couldn't hurt. Another one with Biden in Kiev, and he's saying, "My gosh, this disaster in Ohio is worse than I thought." And somebody whispering to him, "Mr. President, we're actually in Ukraine." On the ball, that one is. We've got news coming up in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. A few months ago, there was that story that made international headlines. The teacher that was shot by the 6-year-old student, and it was another one of these stories just incomprehensible to me. How it was that apparently, according to the lawsuit that the shot teacher is filing, that everyone knew the kid had a gun. Several people had gone to an administrator or administrators, whether it was the same one or different ones, but somehow they just couldn't find it. None of it made sense to me. It's just odd. A Virginia mother is facing legal consequences after his 6-year-old son was said to have been caught with a handgun at an elementary school. Norfolk police arrested Letty Lopez, 35, Friday after an investigation determined her son took the gun to Little Creek Elementary School on Thursday. Police responded to the school February 16th for the report of a student having a weapon in the school. When officers arrived, school administrators turned over the handgun to them. No injuries were reported during the incident. Here's another one. Missouri teacher finds loaded gun in 5-year-old's bag. According to reports, an elementary school teacher in Missouri found a loaded gun in a 5-year-old's bag on Friday, according to local report. Wait, is this like something that happens all the time, but it's all of the sudden getting attention? Does it not seem like crazy to you that 5- and 6-year-olds are just coming to school with loaded guns?
Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot more stories here recently.
I remember the summer of 2001. There were two things going on that summer. Gary Condit was a congressman whose intern, Chandra Levy, was found, she had disappeared. And there were a lot of rumors about them having an affair and so forth. And they went all through the park, couldn't find her. And then her family hired a private investigator and found her body in the exact place police had looked. So I remember that happening during that period of time. And then also, every day there were shark attack reports on TV. And then at some point, it was probably somebody like John Stossel, noted that when it came to the shark attacks, actually the number that were happening that summer were in line with the number of attacks that happened every summer. It's just for whatever reason, other than Gary Condit, there wasn't a lot going on in the news. And so there was a report of one shark attack, and so then shark attacks became relevant, and you would think, though, it was a huge spike. So I'm wondering, is this a common occurrence, 5- and 6-year-olds showing up with loaded weapons at school? So listen to this story, though. This one is just as perplexing to me as as any of these, I suppose. So the teacher, this is in Town and Country, Missouri, outside of St. Louis. The teacher found the gun around 8:45 a.m. at Principia Lower School in Town and Country, Missouri, about a 20-minute drive west of St. Louis. Staff members took the gun and gave it to police upon arrival, according to Fox 2. Head of schools Mary Sorrells told the station that the entire school community was notified about the incident. Quote, "We wanted our parents to know that they were never at risk or a threat to any of our students or community members." Okay, no, so this is a 5-year-old who, according to the report, showed up with a loaded gun, okay? Town and Country Police Chief James Camvins said his department believes that the incident was inadvertent and that the student did not intend to harm anyone, nor was there any negligence found on part of the student's parents. Now, I'm not saying that that's not possible. Maybe he picked up the wrong bat, or who knows what happened. But it just, you have a 5-year-old with a loaded gun that shows up at school, and they're like, oh, nobody did anything erroneous here. It just seems such an odd thing. And I'm not one of these that, blame the parents every time a kid does something bad with a gun. This is generally not how a story plays out like this, though these stories, once again, seem to be relatively new. This story, it's a Fox News story, notes that schools are on high alert after the 6-year-old first grader at the Virginia elementary school shot a teacher during an altercation last month. Of course, then I mentioned just this last Friday, there was another incident of a gun, though no one was shot, from a 6-year-old. This story notes that last week there was a 6-year-old boy in North Carolina who was caught with an unloaded 9mm firearm in his backpack after another student alerted a teacher. The teacher was able to secure the backpack and remove the child from the classroom. Now, I am curious about a follow-up on the St. Louis story. What are the circumstances that lead law enforcement to believe that the parents were not negligent and the child didn't mean any harm and it was inadvertent on his behalf as well? Again, I can only suspect that he picked up a bag that didn't belong to him, and it really truly was inadvertent, and the parents really weren't neglectful. But these are the sorts of stories I always want follow-ups on because they leave so many questions. And oftentimes there are legitimate answers, but they're just hard to figure out what they are. And too often there aren't the follow-up stories, and so it leaves you just speculating and filling in holes everywhere. But so that's like 4 just from these articles. You've got the Virginia mother, you got the Virginia school shooting, the 6-year-old. This one from last Friday, a Virginia mother facing charges. Last week, a 6-year-old boy in North Carolina with an unloaded 9mm. And then in Town and Country, Missouri, Friday, a teacher found a loaded gun in a bag that was in the possession of a 5-year-old in that school, too. Just odd. Jason Rima with the latest news update. Yeah, that story that Rima had about the child labor situation, there's a massive elephant, if you will, in the room regarding this. And these are assuredly children that are being trafficked from south of the border. This is more of the result of having the open border policy. In fact, I have a story that PJ Media covers this, and it is crazy insane. Now, I do believe that we do a disservice to young people by not allowing them into the workforce, certain kids at certain ages. I think that it is part of a learning experience, particularly when it comes to a young person's character, in which there's a lot of benefit to be had there. But some of this stuff, it sounds like these kids were in these factories is just absolutely incredible. So we'll get to that here in just a moment. The first alert forecast today, mostly sunny, high of 66, 38 for a low tonight, sunny 61 tomorrow, and then Wednesday showers and storms with a high of 66. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Well, if you are in the market for a great roofing company, highly recommend my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now we have, what'd you say, rain on Wednesday?
Showers and storms.
Okay, so if Wednesday you notice some leaks in your roof, maybe you've had some shingles blow off with some winds that have moved in, you can give the Pyramid Roofing Company a call. They can come out, give you a free estimate, get on top of your roof, take tons of photos and videos to show you exactly what is going on. And maybe you'll be in a situation where you don't need a whole new roof. Maybe you need just a roof repair. Either way, the Pyramid Roofing Company, they will shoot you straight and they will be upfront and honest about what you need and what you don't need. So if you do find yourself in the market for a roofing company, highly recommend Pyramid. Now you can find all of the content contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
Coming up, more of Biden's illegal immigrant minors discovered as child laborers in U.S. factories. Thank goodness we got rid of Trump. Remember when he was keeping those kids in those cages? When the whole time they could have been living the glorious life as child laborers in U.S. factories dealing with heavy machinery and caustic chemicals. Good Lord Almighty. Heroes Breakfast coming up Friday. If you are a veteran, as we broadcast live from Scramblers this Friday, you get yourself free breakfast. That is 6A to 9A. That thanks to Serenity Honors, Delta Roofing, and Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, and Electrical. And all you got to do is come out and get yourself some free breakfast for you veterans. Heroes Breakfast this Friday. Thought I'd share a piece with you. More of Biden's illegal immigrant minors discovered as child laborers in U.S. factories. And this, once again, falls into the category of the people that the Democrat Party claims they care about the most are the people who suffer the most under them. I mean, just consistently, this is the case. Athena Thorne writes that the Democrat campaign to import a massive, new, uneducated servant class that will vote for them into power in perpetuity is proceeding apace. In today's chapter, and Rima had a bit of this story in his news, we learn that yet another tranche of illegal alien minors has been pressed into child labor in U.S. factories. NBC News had part of the story on Friday. The Labor Department said Friday it found 102 kids as young as 13 working hazardous overnight jobs cleaning slaughterhouses in 8 states in what it called a corporate-wide failure by one of the largest food sanitation companies in the country, Packers Sanitation Services. The Labor Department says the children who are working overnight shifts use caustic chemicals to clean razor-sharp saws. The company employs 17,000 workers at 700 sites nationwide. Athena writes, I say part of this story because there's one important detail left out of the report. Where the heck did these kids come from? But it was easy enough to figure out. American-born children generally have parents present who look after them. Those whose parents die or fall or fail on the job are placed in the state's custody, and while that has its own set of problems, foster parents get paid for keeping the kids under their roof, so they don't generally farm them out to factory duty. So where do unethical businesses turn when they want oversight free indentured children? Why Biden's open border policy, of course. The U.S. Department of Labor has been investigating the Packers Sanitation Services, Inc. since late last fall, at least. After the situation was revealed, the Department of Homeland Security belatedly hopped in to investigate whether the kids had been trafficked. Spoiler alert, of course they had. How else do they get here? But when you are part of the very system that does the trafficking, as DHS is, with its repurposed Customs and Border Protection Agency, you're likely not going to see the forest for the trees. NBC reported a month ago in court filings the company did not deny hiring children, but attributed it to rogue individuals who presented fake identifications with Social Security numbers that were verified by the federal government's E-Verify system. Ah, yes, those rogue individuals are the bad guys, not the DHS, who picks up these kids from their coyotes to whom the children are now indebted and processes or simply releases them into the country. I wonder if the minors arrived in the Midwest on one of Biden's ghost flights, or if they took a publicity-funded bus. By all means, let's get those rogue individuals. Last December, I wrote about the illegal alien miners who were laboring away in auto parts factories and poultry processing plants in the country's interior. I've also explored how Biden's human trafficking victims end up in positions of sexual slavery. I explained how it works in another article where I wrote, Slavery's sister, indenture, works by signing desperate people onto debt that they can never pay off, thus conscripting them to a life of service and obedience to their benefactor. For example, in the United States, both historically and today, immigrants are imported into the country in exchange for a crushing fee, indebting them to their patron or smuggler, as the case may be. In the past, as today, immigrants paid off their debt either by handing over their meager wages or with outright bodily slavery via drudgery or sexual trafficking. Finally, she writes, it's sickening that Americans are forced to support this appalling system with our tax dollars. The greatest service our newly Republican House of Representatives can perform is to shut down any and all funding for this despicable machine. The areas of our country in which Democrats have their way, or Democrats, we see the results of Democrat policies, they really do look like third world countries. Other than third world countries do a better job of protecting their borders, you look at the inner cities. We had earlier there was a story in the San Francisco Chronicle about a 13-year-old girl who came to the United States with her mother and aunt from Ukraine, fleeing the war. And after being enrolled in the school there, wants to go back to her war-torn country because of how out of control and dangerous the public school system is. Students yelling and cursing at teachers, fighting all the time, administrations refusing to step in and fix the problem. A lot of these illegals that were placed in these high-end hotels in New York and then eventually moved out of them after destroying them want to go to Canada because it's too dangerous in New York City. You have in Democrat-run cities in this country crime that is absolutely rampant. You have people ODing and defecating in the streets. You have miles and miles of people living in tents. Over the weekend in Austin, you had largely younger people that had essentially taken over an intersection. Law enforcement could do nothing. There were thousands of them, it appeared. I think I saw one estimate over 1,000, but it's hard to tell with those numbers sometimes. And they were essentially doing street races, shooting off fireworks, no control whatsoever. And now the very people that demonized the Trump administration for kids in cages, which only got any traction to begin with because it was erroneously not realized that they were Obama cages, that those photos were going around. But once that cat was out of the bag, they had to try and portray it as some sort of Trump policy. And you had Democrats, boy, they had no trouble rushing to the border over that. Ocasio-Cortez crying through a fence. Meanwhile, you have many of these kids apparently popping up, working overnight in factories with caustic chemicals and sharp tools, and, no wringing of the hands, but again, looking like a third world country. Every area of our country that has been affected by left-wing policies look like third world countries. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. To further illustrate the point that I was making about the areas of the country that you really see Democrat policies implemented end up looking like third world countries. San Francisco facilitating slow motion suicides, letting addicts use drugs without treatment, recovering user. San Francisco activists and former drug users are questioning a proposal that would provide places for addicts to ingest illegal drugs as the city endures an unprecedented overdose crisis. Tom Wolfe, a drug recovery advocate and former fentanyl user, told Fox News, quote, "Letting someone stay on the street and shoot dope until they die is not compassion. It's not progressive." Well, it is progressive. But you are correct, it is not compassion. He noted it's not even really respecting their civil liberties. It's letting someone kill themselves in front of you in slow motion. We should not normalize the fact that 600 people a year are dying in San Francisco from drug overdoses. In an effort to curb overdose deaths, San Francisco Mayor London Breed has supported efforts to open supervised consumption sites, centers where users can use legal drugs indoors under the supervision of trained staff. Additionally, a bill that would allow supervised consumption sites is making its way through the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Wolf noted, regardless of how you feel about the sites, they're probably coming to San Francisco. Is it going to make a difference in the aggregate without doing all of the other things we need to do, like breaking up the organized drug dealing ring that's operating in San Francisco, reducing the supply of drugs, increasing treatment options for people? No, it will not make a difference. What it will do is it's going to increase the number of drug addicts in San Francisco. There were over 2,900 accidental overdose deaths in San Francisco between January of 2017 and December of 2022, according to city data. More than 1,800 of those overdose deaths involved fentanyl, outnumbering the city's homicides, traffic fatalities, and COVID-19 deaths combined over the same period. In fact, overdose deaths outpaced murders nearly tenfold, according to city data. So, of course, what is the answer that the Democrats want to introduce? Facilitate it. Encourage it. Make it easier. California Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill last year that would have allowed cities like San Francisco and Oakland to open supervised consumption sites, noting that they would lead to unintended consequences. Each safe injection site in San Francisco could cost taxpayers $2.6 million a year. Costs a lot of money to slow motion murder your citizens. Third world country. A reminder, Floors Plus in Nixa and Springfield, 0% financing for 12 months for all your flooring and plus needs. Plus, among other things, your kitchen backsplashes, customized tile showers, and more. For flooring, carpeting, luxury vinyl planking, hardwood, tile. 0% financing 12 months. Floors Plus in Nixa and Floors Plus in Springfield. Mostly sunny. High of 66 today. Tonight, clouds 38. Sunny 61 tomorrow. Wednesday, showers and storms with a high of 66. Democrat Marianne Williamson teases important announcement in March. It is speculated it may be an announcement that she is going to run for president of the United States. So we're going to find out during this process if Democrats feel as if there is anyone, any single Democrat that would do better than Joe Biden. Because that's what this is about, right? Or are Democrats going to decide, nope, right now the state of affairs for the Democrat Party is that Joe Biden is the absolute best we have. There's no one that's better. Marianne Williamson, author and spiritual thought leader who ran for president as a Democrat in 2020, planning the important announcement early next month in Washington. She said in a statement, as America gears up for the 2024 presidential election, I'm preparing an important announcement on March 4th in Washington, D.C. She added a list of her 3 central motivations that have propelled her to explore the possibility of running for the Democrat nomination for president in 2024. Those motivations include a commitment to the tenets of liberty espoused in the Declaration of Independence and the Gettysburg Address, a realization of the Democrat Party's shift away from the party of Franklin Roosevelt, and the economic injustices endured by millions of Americans due to the influence of corporate money on our political system. She added, I look forward to discussing with the country my thoughts about where we have been as a nation, where we are now, and where we need to go from here. She would be the first official Democrat candidate to enter the race and the first to serve as a potential challenger to Joe Biden, who told PBS on February 8th it is his intention to run. He is reportedly eyeing an April announcement. So this, again, will be the opportunity for Democrats to either say, yes, we do believe we have better options for the American people than Joe Biden, or Joe Biden is as good as it gets for the Democrats. Over the weekend, the news cycle had a bit of coverage regarding Roald Dahl. Now, this is an author that, while many may not recognize his name, they recognize many of his books, such as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which, of course, would be made into Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, The Witches. The reason that his name is in the news is because the publisher of his popular children's book have made edits to make the work more inclusive. The publisher, Puffin, Puffin, made hundreds of changes to the books, taking out words or passages that might be considered offensive in the modern context. They also added passages that were never even in the original text to begin with. For example, in the 2001 edition of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Grandma Josephine speaks of a crazy Indian prince. The 2022 edition describes the character as a ridiculously rich Indian prince. Augustus Gloop, one of the antagonists in the novel, is no longer described as enormously fat. Instead, he's now simply described as enormous. Aunt Sponge in the 2022 edition of James and the Giant Peach is described as quite large instead of enormously fat. Multiple other passages in which Aunt Sponge is described as fat are edited to remove the descriptor. In another instance, 2 ghastly hags was changed to 2 ghastly ants. The word queer was removed as the descriptor of a house, and it was swapped with strange. In The Witches, several edits were made to make character descriptors gender neutral. A chambermaid was swapped for a cleaner. A line in which a character says, "You must be mad, woman," changed to, "You must be out of your mind." The line describing a great flock of ladies was changed to a great group of ladies. And on and on and on and on. Now, the reason that I bring this up isn't so much because, here we go again. But we hear a false narrative constantly pushed about how it's right-wing conservatives that are always trying to censor things, right? And you have different forms of censorship. You have the elimination altogether of stories or books, and then you have the rewriting of them. So in other words, the elimination of unapproved words, unapproved phrases. If one did not know any better and they simply read news leader articles or watched local news here, they would think that the real issue with censorship are these right-wing Christian conservatives. Now, when it comes to things that are in the school library, I have noted the purpose of the library is to have material in there that is going to help when it comes to children being prepared for the real world. particularly when it comes to competing against kids, students from other countries that are so much far further advanced because their cultures really focus on true, meaningful education. There is only so much room in a school library, which means books have to be chosen. And that by default means that some books are not chosen to be on the shelves. That's just, listen, if you have a bookshelf at home, there's only so much room on it. You have to decide what books go on it and what don't go on it. It's the same thing with the public school systems. And you do have parents that don't want pornography to be part of what is accessible to young people. They aren't arguing that the books themselves should not exist. They're not arguing that you should not be able to order them and hand them to your own children if you are intent on them reading pornography. They're simply saying where everyone has children and all the children will have access, let's not have porn there. But when it comes to what the left wants to censor, either it is oftentimes political ideals or it is, one of the more recent examples was a call for, I believe it was Amazon, to not sell Amy Coney Barrett's book, the Supreme Court Justice, because, you know, she's a right-winger. These are instances with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and James and the Giant Peach. This is censorship. This is altering the original intent. This is removing words. This is at times adding passages. And it's coming from the left. And so once again, it shows that when it comes to, quote, censorship, what you hear from the right is regarding what is accessible to all children and saying, let's not do porn. But when it comes to those on the left, they are definitely in the censorship game. But if you notice, they hit the private sector as well. And it isn't about sexually explicit material for whatever weird reason. They tend to like the idea of children having access to that material. But it's the totalitarian languages and ideas that they go after. And this is just another example of it. So anytime you hear people at a school board meeting and they are defending giving all children in the school access to pornography, and they accuse you of censorship and how in America we should not be supportive of censorship, oh, they support it. Plenty. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Weeks after the train derailment in Ohio, the Republican Governor Mike DeWine has announced that FEMA's finally going to be sending aid to East Palestine. He made this in a joint statement with the federal agency. This, again, is full display an administration that is way late to the game, and their instinct anytime there is a mess, whether that is a border security mess, that is a China spying on the United States mess, that is a train derailment mess, their first instinct is to just pretend it's not happening. The baby formula, that was another one where it was way too late in the game before they began responding to that. You can go down the list of all of these real-life scenarios that have a real, true negative impact in which many people would argue, all right, this is the place where government is going to step in or should be stepping in with some sort of solution. Those are the instances, however, where they're absent. They just, if we pretend it's not happening, then it will just go away on its own. And it is telling almost the quiet acknowledgement of total incompetence and lack of trust that that Americans, or in this case people in Ohio, should have in their government. Because even those who say, oh, yes, the EPA says this is good, or, the government is saying it's safe to drink the water, they're still saying, well, I don't know that I would necessarily drink it. The administration is messaging out there that the water is perfectly fine to drink. It is perfectly fine to bathe in. It is perfectly fine to do whatever else with. But nobody is responding as if they believe that. That's what it's such a clear acknowledgement of a total lack of trust in our government. Utilities in Cincinnati and northern Kentucky have completely shut the Ohio River water tank or intake valves early Sunday morning over concerns about contamination of hazardous materials from the train that derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. The two utilities, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks and Northern Kentucky Waterworks, said that they are taking precautions as testing found at least low levels of chemicals from the toxic spill in some places at intakes along the waterway amid reports of fish dying en masse in local waterways and East Palestine residents reporting ailments such as headaches and rashes. So what you have here is, on one hand, the government saying, the water's fine, we've tested it, it's good to drink, but everyone else saying, we don't think that you're telling the truth. Plus, fish are dying, we've done our own testing and we've found things of concern, we have headaches, we have all sorts of physical reactions going on. We don't believe you. But the administration continues down this propaganda line of everything's okay. Senator Sherrod Brown, Democrat from Ohio, gave an indirect answer when asked if he would drink the water in East Palestine. Isn't it funny? It's just amazing how Democrats that are always so quick to jump on banning this or stop using those, or we must halt this project because somebody heard an owl hoot in the background. They are just so knee-jerk reaction when it comes to anything involving the environment. Yet this particular situation with the massive mushroom cloud in the sky, people getting sick, dead fish everywhere, and they're like, it's okay. I mean, it's no big deal. What's everyone worried about? We finally found an environmental situation that Democrats seemingly aren't too concerned about. Appearing on CNN State of the Union yesterday, Democrat Senator Brown deferred to local officials when asked whether he would drink the water contaminated by chemicals from the Norfolk Southern train derailment on February 3rd. Brown went on to blame the derailment on the rail company, claiming it laid off key workers and conducted stock buybacks instead of investing in safety. So in other words, horrible capitalism. Pamela Brown asked, would you drink the water in East Palestine? And do you think the officials who are saying it's safe, they should drink the water too to show the residents that they would drink it? He responded by saying, well, I think they are. I mean, I talked to the mayor. The mayor said definitely, emphatically, that people can drink the water. I don't know. I don't think the mayor has small kids. He looks a little older to me. I didn't ask him about bathing his kids, but he said he would drink the water. Now, have you ever heard, once again, when it comes to the environment, a Democrat dance around to that degree? Now, you knew this was coming. Trump plans visit to East Palestine, says locals need help. Former President Trump will in the coming days visit the town. Trump indicated he would arrive at the small town on the Pennsylvania border on Wednesday, according to a statement released by his 2024 presidential campaign. The statement chided President Joe Biden's administration for appearing to flip-flop on providing disaster assistance from FEMA. Trump said Biden and FEMA said that they would not be sending federal aid to East Palestine. As soon as I announced I'm going, he announced a team will go. Hopefully he will also be there. This is good news because we got them to move. The people of East Palestine need help. I'll see you on Wednesday. FEMA initially announced that the derailment did not qualify for federal disaster aid, but noted the Department of Health and Human Services would provide assistance. But by Friday, and we knew this would happen because this is once again typical of this administration. They make an announcement pretending as if the problem's not that big. Then when there is a public backlash against it, they do a 180-degree flip, just like shooting down the Chinese balloon. Oh, it's fine, nothing to worry about. The recognition is there that that doesn't look real good for us, so let's shoot it down. Oh, you don't qualify for any FEMA assistance. Massive backlash over that. Oh, wait, never mind, I guess you do. Now, I wonder how much news coverage Trump's visit will get. How much? I'm very interested to see how all of that plays out. So that is slated for Wednesday, Trump making a visit there to East Palestine in Ohio. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. I often direct you guys to my Facebook page, 1041 Nick Reed, to see my Garage Experts transformation video. But I also would encourage you to go to ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. And it's more of a, instead of not so much visual as it is just a conversation with Mark and Shelley Long of Garage Experts. And they can get a sense and a feel of not only what they do, but the kind of people they are. And they're just great folks. And you know, when it comes to making such improvements on your home, having the right people do it for you can make just all the difference in the world. So I do recommend that you swing over and you do watch that informational video under Nick's endorsements for Garage Experts. We do Friday have a Hero's Breakfast, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, Serenity Honors, making that possible, purchasing breakfast for veterans. That is this Friday at Scramblers on Republic Road and National, all part of our Friday Roadshow, which is always sponsored by Affordable Towing. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I will talk to you tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.